Story 1. The engagement that nearly ruined me. I had been planning my wedding with Eleanor, the woman I believed would be my wife, right up until last week. But then, everything unraveled, and I was forced to call off our engagement after her family left me with no choice. To understand what went wrong, you need to know that Eleanor and I came from vastly different worlds. I, Henry Whitmore, was raised in a stable and loving household. My parents, both esteemed scientists, nurtured me in an environment of security and self-reliance. They worked long hours to ensure I had every opportunity, teaching me the value of integrity, independence, and respect. My childhood was one of comfort, free from the weight of financial burdens. Eleanor's upbringing, however, was a stark contrast. She was the eldest of 6 siblings, born into a family that constantly struggled to stay afloat. Her parents, plagued by addiction, could barely provide for themselves, let alone their children. From an early age, Eleanor became the de facto provider, assuming responsibilities far beyond her years. As soon as she was old enough to earn, she was sending money home, paying for rent, food, and anything else her family demanded. From the moment we met, Eleanor was upfront about her situation. She made it clear that a significant portion of her earnings went to her family, and I admired her selflessness. But as time went on, I saw the toll it took on her. The incessant phone calls, the guilt-ridden pleas from her siblings, the manipulation from her parents, it was a relentless cycle of sacrifice and expectation. I couldn't ignore how drained she became, how the weight of her family's dependence wore her down. Whenever I suggested she establish boundaries, Eleanor would bristle, shutting down any discussion on the matter. "You don't understand, Henry," she'd say. "You're an only child. You've never had to take care of anyone but yourself." I tried to respect her wishes, to let her handle it her way. After all, it was her money, her choice. I refrained from pressing the issue, even though it was clear that her family was bleeding her dry, financially and emotionally. Instead, I focused on being a supportive partner, always standing by her side. For 2.5 years, I did everything I could to make her feel cherished. I paid for our dinners, covered our trips, took care of her needs, not because she asked but because I wanted to. It was my way of showing love, of ensuring she never felt alone in the world. And so, when I finally got down on one knee and asked her to marry me, I was certain we were stepping into a beautiful future together. She said yes. I was over the moon, ready to build a life with the woman I loved. But then the demands started. Not from Eleanor, but from her family. The moment our engagement was announced, the calls intensified. Only now they weren't just asking Eleanor for money, they were asking me. Or rather, expecting me. Her mother, in a tone laced with entitlement, informed me that as Eleanor's husband-to-be, it was now my duty to step up and take care of the family. Her siblings, emboldened by my proposal, began hinting at their financial needs: tuition fees, car repairs, overdue rent. They spoke as if I had inherited this responsibility by default, as if my love for Eleanor meant I had signed an invisible contract to bankroll them all. I was stunned. When I tried to address this with Eleanor, she dismissed my concerns as she always had. "They're my family, Henry. They need us." That was the turning point. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was about me being expected to carry a burden I had never agreed to shoulder. I wasn't marrying a woman, I was marrying a debt, an endless, insatiable need that would consume every ounce of my financial and emotional resources. The final straw came when Eleanor's father, who had never held a stable job in his life, casually mentioned that he expected us to buy him a house. As if it were the most natural thing in the world. As if it were my duty. I looked at Eleanor, waiting for her to defend me, to tell her father that this was absurd. But she didn't. She simply placed a hand over mine and smiled as if this had been the plan all along. That night, I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, my mind racing. Was this what my future would be? A lifetime of being milked dry, of shouldering a responsibility that was never mine to bear? No, I couldn't do it. The next morning, I ended our engagement. Eleanor was devastated. So was I. I had loved her. I had envisioned a future with her. But love should never come at the cost of self-destruction. Her family called me cruel, selfish, cold-hearted. Perhaps they were right. But as I walked away, free from the suffocating weight of their expectations, I knew one thing for certain. I had just saved myself from a lifetime of being used. Story 2. My sister's war against my happiness. My relationship with my older sister, Charlotte, has never been perfect. Far from it, if I'm honest. But things took a devastating turn after I announced my pregnancy last year. What should have been one of the happiest times of my life quickly became tainted by her relentless cruelty. To give you some background, my husband, James, and I have been together for 8 years, married for 3. At 29 and 27, we had built a stable life together, James working in finance while I thrived in healthcare. We had always envisioned starting a family around this time, and when we discovered I was pregnant, we were overjoyed. My parents were ecstatic, my friends showered me with love, but Charlotte? Charlotte saw it as an unforgivable betrayal. My sister had always considered herself the rebellious one, the free spirit who scoffed at tradition. She traveled constantly, switched jobs every few years, and prided herself on her independence. That was fine. Everyone should live their life as they see fit. But as soon as she found out I was expecting, it was as if I had personally attacked her values, as if my choice to start a family was a direct condemnation of her own lifestyle. At first, it was just subtle jabs. "You're wasting your best years, Sophie," she'd say, shaking her head with theatrical disappointment. "You're only 27. Do you really want to trap yourself in nappies and sleepless nights?" Then the remarks became sharper. As my belly grew, so did her cruelty. "You're letting yourself go," she'd smirk. "Some women actually stay in shape when they're pregnant, you know?" The first time she said it, I laughed it off, convincing myself that it was just Charlotte being Charlotte. But then she started sending me articles, grim stories of women who lost themselves after having children, memes about how motherhood sucked the joy out of life. It was no longer just about my body. She was determined to convince me that my life was over. Then came the ultimate betrayal. I found out she had been talking about me behind my back to our friends I had considered my support system. She told them I was throwing my talents away, that she couldn't understand why anyone would willingly destroy their own life. One of my closest friends even pulled me aside one day, hesitating before finally asking, "Are you sure you're ready for this? I mean, it's a huge responsibility." The words stung like a slap. She had planted doubt in people who should have been lifting me up. But the final gut-wrenching moment, the moment I knew I had to walk away, happened at my baby shower. My mother and best friend had organized a beautiful celebration. The house was filled with warmth and laughter. My loved ones gathered to celebrate this incredible new chapter in my life. For once I felt at peace. Then Charlotte arrived. 3 hours late. Reeking of alcohol. From the moment she stepped inside, she made it her mission to humiliate me. "Blimey, Sophie, you look like you're about to pop. Are you sure you're not having twins?" she cackled, drawing giggles from a few uncomfortable guests. I tried to ignore her, but she didn't stop. She whispered snide comments as she sipped her drink, pointing out how swollen my face looked, laughing as she compared me to an overinflated balloon. Then, as if her cruelty wasn't enough, she lifted her glass in a mocking toast and slurred, "Here's to Sophie, giving up her dreams for a life of dirty nappies and screaming babies." The room fell silent. I felt my heart shatter in my chest. I don't remember when I started crying, only that I suddenly found myself locked in the bathroom, my mother's gentle hands rubbing my back as I gasped for air between sobs. Outside, James was furious. He had tolerated Charlotte's behavior for too long, but this was the last straw. He stormed over to her, his voice a low growl. "Get out." She scoffed, rolling her eyes. "Oh, come on, James. Everyone's being dramatic." I said get out. The room was deathly silent as she staggered towards the door, but before leaving she threw back her head and laughed. "You lot are so bloody thin-skinned. Enjoy your boring little life, Sophie." And just like that she was gone. For weeks afterward she continued to brush it off as a joke, telling me I was too hormonal and that I needed to lighten up. But it wasn't just the baby shower. There were other moments, ones I had tried to ignore because I didn't have the strength to confront them. The time she invited me to a yoga class, only to spend the entire session making backhanded remarks about how much harder it must be for me now. The nights she would turn up unannounced with her friends, treating me like a spectacle. "Look how much she's changed. Can you believe she used to be fun?" I had been holding on to the hope that maybe, just maybe, she'd come around. That she'd see my pregnancy for what it was, a beautiful, life-changing moment. But that hope was gone now. The truth is, Charlotte didn't hate that I was pregnant. She hated that I was happy. And for the sake of my own peace, I finally did what I should have done long ago. I cut her out of my life. Not forever, perhaps. But for now, I refuse to allow her negativity to poison the joy I feel for my growing family. Because I deserve to be surrounded by love. By people who lift me up, not tear me down. And as I hold James's hand, feeling our baby kick for the first time, I know that I made the right choice. Charlotte may be my sister by blood, but family is more than just DNA. And right now, my family is the one I'm creating, with love, with joy, and with people who truly care. Story 3. A sibling's struggle for identity. From the moment I could walk, talk, and think for myself, I knew I was living in someone else's shadow. My sister, Victoria, wasn't just the golden child. She was the blueprint for perfection itself. The daughter my parents had always wanted. The living embodiment of discipline, brilliance, and success. Victoria excelled at everything. Her grades were flawless, her demeanor poised, and her ability to focus was almost robotic. She had a hunger for achievement that seemed effortless. Teachers adored her. My parents praised her endlessly. She could do no wrong. And then, there was me. I was a whirlwind of unfinished assignments, forgotten deadlines, and misplaced notebooks. A storm of distractions, constantly battling my own mind. I tried to be like her. To sit still in class, to force my brain to retain information the way hers did. But no matter how hard I struggled, I always fell short. And every failure of mine only seemed to highlight how perfect she was. I wasn't disciplined. I wasn't structured. I wasn't like Victoria. And in our household that meant I wasn't enough. The weight of expectation. My parents were high achievers. Both of them respected scholars, revered in their fields, their names spoken with admiration in professional circles. They had always envisioned their children following in their footsteps, soaring to the same great heights. Victoria was doing exactly that. And I was an embarrassment. I saw the disappointment in their eyes, even when they tried to hide it. The constant comparisons to Victoria weren't even subtle anymore. Why can't you be more like her? Why don't you apply yourself? Victoria never needed help, why do you? Every question felt like a dagger, a reminder that in their eyes I was defective. But nothing hurt more than hearing it from Victoria herself. We attended the same school, which meant that her achievements loomed over me everywhere I went. Teachers who had once taught her would sigh when they realized I was her sister. "Oh, you're Victoria's sibling?" The unsaid words hung in the air, "and yet you're so different." Victoria made sure I never forgot it. If I forgot to turn in my homework or got caught passing notes in class, she was the first to lecture me. If I failed a test, she'd shake her head in disgust. "You're embarrassing the family," she'd say. "Do you even care? Do you even try?" Her words stung worse than my parents' disappointment. They weren't just criticism, they were confirmation of what I had feared all along, that I was a failure, that I would always be a failure. And so, I tried harder. I stayed up late, forcing myself to study, forcing myself to be better. But the more I tried to fit into the mold of who I was supposed to be, the more I crumbled under the pressure. My mind refused to cooperate, slipping into distractions I couldn't control. I told myself I was just lazy, just weak. I just needed to work harder, be smarter, be more. But no matter how much effort I put in, I always fell short. The breaking point. It wasn't until years later that everything suddenly made sense. I was diagnosed with ADHD. The moment the doctor explained it to me, it was like my entire life had been rewritten in an instant. Every struggle, every frustration, every moment of feeling broken. It wasn't because I was lazy or stupid or not trying hard enough. My brain was simply wired differently. The forgotten homework, the constant distractions, the inability to focus for more than a few minutes at a time, it was all part of a condition I had unknowingly been battling my entire life. It wasn't my fault. For the first time, I had an answer. And more importantly, I had hope. With medication, therapy, and newfound understanding, I began to reshape my life. I learned to manage my focus, to work with my brain instead of against it. It wasn't an overnight fix, but little by little, I regained control. I found my own strengths, my own ways of succeeding, ways that didn't involve being like Victoria. But my parents? They never truly accepted it. To them, ADHD was just an excuse. A label for lazy people who refused to push themselves. And Victoria? Well, she never missed a chance to remind me that, diagnosis or not, I still wasn't on her level. Choosing myself. I spent years trying to earn their approval, trying to prove that I was worth something. But in the end, I realized something crucial. I didn't need their approval to be happy. I had spent my entire life fighting to be someone I wasn't, all for the sake of people who would never see me as enough. But I was enough. Maybe not in their eyes, but in my own. So I stopped trying. I built a life that made me happy. I found success in ways that mattered to me. I surrounded myself with people who saw my value, not my failures. And for the first time in my life, I stepped out of Victoria's shadow and into my own light. Because I am not her. And that's okay. Life teaches us more than no two journeys are the same. That's enough. Sometimes, we spend too long trying to fit into a mold that was never meant for us, forgetting that our uniqueness is our greatest strength. Whether it's family expectations, societal pressure, or our own insecurities, we must learn to break free and embrace who we truly are. Comparing ourselves to others, especially siblings, only robs us of the joy of discovering our own path. If you've ever felt overshadowed, overlooked, or underestimated, know this: you are not alone. Your worth is not defined by others' expectations, and your success is measured by your own happiness. Do you resonate with this story? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more inspiring content.